The city lights flickered like restless stars across the Manhattan skyline when Preston Caldwell's phone buzzed. It wasn't a scheduled call, not a board member or one of his assistants. The number on the screen was unfamiliar, the digits scrambled like they belonged to no one at all. He almost ignored it. Almost. But something inside him whispered to answer. The voice on the other end wasn't what he expected. It wasn't polished, confident, or professional. It was raw, trembling, and young. "Mr. Caldwell," the girl stammered, "your daughter?" "Addison. She was taken at Riverside Park." For a moment, Preston thought it was some cruel prank. A sick joke aimed at one of the wealthiest men in the country. But there was something in that voice, a weight of truth, a sharp edge of fear, that dug under his skin. Addison was supposed to be safe. His fortune bought walls of glass and steel, bodyguards trained like soldiers, and gated escapes where danger had no entry pass. Yet here was a stranger, a teenager by the sound of her, telling him the one thing money couldn't guarantee: safety. Preston's throat tightened. "Who is this? How do you know my daughter?" The pause that followed was heavier than any answer. "You don't know me," the girl said finally. "But I was there. I saw everything." They pulled her into a van right by the carousel. The words punched through him. He saw the image in his mind, his little girl's curls bouncing as she laughed on the painted horses, her favorite pink jacket zipped halfway, the cotton candy still sticky on her hands. Then a van swallowing her whole. Preston's chest heaved as his fingers dug into the leather armrest of his chair. "Why are you calling me? Why not the police?" That's when the tone shifted. The girl's voice cracked, but her words carried an unsettling certainty. "Because, Mr. Caldwell, I think the people closest to you already knew it was going to happen." His pulse roared in his ears. Betrayal? From his own security detail? The very men he trusted with his family's lives? The room around him blurred, the city skyline nothing but smudged light through glass. And then, just as suddenly, the girl whispered, "I shouldn't be on this line. They're watching me too." The call ended. Preston sat frozen, staring at the dead screen, his reflection staring back like a stranger. A billionaire with everything at his fingertips. Yet in that moment he had nothing. No answers. No daughter. Only a stranger's trembling warning echoing in his ears. If the girl was telling the truth, the people sworn to protect him might have been plotting against him all along. Who exactly was this girl, and why risk her life to call him? The phone still buzzed in his hand, the aftershock of the call rattling through Preston's bones. He replayed the voice in his mind, trying to pull meaning from the cracks of her trembling words. A teenager. A girl. Afraid, yet determined enough to reach him directly. But how had she gotten his number? Preston Caldwell's personal line wasn't listed anywhere, not even in most corporate files. Only a handful of people in his inner circle had access to it. That made the call even more disturbing. He rose from his leather chair, pacing across the marble floor of his penthouse office. The room, usually a sanctuary of polished power, now felt like a cage. Shadows stretched long under the dim lights, as if mocking the cracks in his control. "Think, Preston," he muttered to himself. "Who is she? What does she really know?" The girl's words rang in his ears. "They're watching me too." He pictured her, unknown, faceless, somewhere in the city's vast underbelly. Maybe huddled in a payphone booth, maybe whispering from a cheap motel room with peeling wallpaper. Wherever she was, fear was breathing down her neck. And yet she had chosen to call him. What? Out of pity? Guilt? Or something deeper? The more he thought, the clearer one detail became. This wasn't the kind of call an opportunist would make. There was no ransom demand, no mention of money. She wanted to warn him. That meant she had witnessed something real. Still, a question gnawed at him. If she saw Addison dragged into a van, why hadn't she gone straight to the authorities? That answer came back to the part of her message that cut deepest. She suspected his own security team. Preston clenched his fists. The men he paid millions to guard his family were now suspects in his mind. He remembered the way they stood like statues at galas, their earpieces humming. He remembered trusting them to walk Addison through crowded airports. Could that loyalty have been a mask? The girl's voice was shaky but not random. Every detail she gave, the carousel, the van, the sudden screams drowned out by laughter, felt sharp and haunting. She wasn't fabricating. She was reliving. And that meant Addison was truly gone. Preston stopped pacing, staring at the floor as if the polished stone could offer answers. His heart hammered in his chest, but beneath the fear was something worse, helplessness. For the first time in his life, the billionaire who controlled skyscrapers, contracts, and fortunes couldn't control what mattered most: his little girl. He gripped the phone again, desperate for the line to buzz with her voice once more. Instead, silence filled the room. Silence, heavy and unrelenting, broken only by the dull hum of the city below. Somewhere out there, a teenage stranger carried truths he couldn't afford to ignore. But if she was the only witness, how long before someone silenced her too? Preston couldn't sleep. He couldn't even sit still. The words of that call gnawed at him like rust on steel. They pulled her into a van right by the carousel. His mind painted the scene whether he wanted it to or not. Addison at Riverside Park. The place he took her when she was little, before business swallowed his life. He could see her bright eyes when the carousel lit up, her laugh competing with the music as she reached for the painted horses. It was one of the few places she still begged to visit, even at 10 years old. That image, so innocent, so normal, was shattered now. He imagined it again, but darker this time. Addison spinning on the carousel, unaware of the shadows moving closer. A white van pulling up. The door sliding open. A hand gripping her arm. The carousel's music masking her cry. Preston pressed his palms into his eyes. The thought was unbearable. But something about the girl's story made the memory sharper. The way she described the sudden screams swallowed by laughter wasn't the kind of detail someone invented. That line carried weight, like someone who had truly been there. And yet, another question pounded inside him. Why Addison? This wasn't a random crime. He knew that. Too many layers of protection surrounded his daughter. To breach that circle, someone had to be watching, waiting, planning, and someone had to have helped. He thought about his security team, the men in black suits who never left her side. He hired them to guard her world, but what if they had opened the gate instead? The thought left bile rising in his throat. He stepped to the window, staring down at the glittering streets below. Somewhere in this vast city his daughter was out there. Somewhere this girl, Kiara she had called herself, was holding on to truths powerful enough to bring down his trust in everyone around him. He remembered something else, the girl's fear. They're watching me too. That meant whoever planned this wasn't done cleaning up loose ends. If Kiara had risked everything to warn him, then maybe Addison wasn't the only one in danger. For the first time, Preston felt it wasn't just a hunt for his daughter, it was a race against time. And the carousel memory? It wasn't just nostalgia anymore. It was a crime scene replaying in his head, daring him to act. If the carousel held the answers, what would he uncover by returning to Riverside Park himself? I think the people closest to you already knew it was going to happen. That line haunted Preston like a curse. For years he prided himself on building an empire where loyalty was bought and secured with contracts and six-figure salaries. His security detail had been vetted, background checked, even handpicked from the military elite. These men weren't just employees, they were shadows tied to his name. But loyalty built on paychecks can rot faster than trust built on love. And the girl's warning forced Preston to confront a truth he didn't want to face. If she was right, the betrayal wasn't on the outside, it was in his home. He replayed his last interactions with them. The stiff nods, the quick glances when Addison skipped ahead of them on their walk. Nothing obvious. But maybe that was the point. Professional betrayal is rarely messy. It's clean. Surgical. Invisible until the damage is already done. He poured himself a glass of water, but his hand shook so badly that drops splashed onto the marble counter. He set the glass down untouched. Could his daughter's captors really be the very men he trusted most? So, then what was their motive? Money? Leverage? Revenge? Preston was no saint. His empire was built on deals that made enemies in boardrooms and back alleys alike. Rivals wanted his downfall, unions despised his grip, politicians owed him favors they resented. He knew there were plenty who would use Addison to get to him. But to think his own guards might hand her over? That was another wound entirely. The more he turned it over, the more one thought screamed at him. The girl didn't hesitate when she said it. Her voice wasn't guessing. It was certain. And certainty doesn't come from suspicion. It comes from proof. That meant she had seen something. Maybe a handshake. A signal. A look exchanged at the wrong time. But if she had witnessed betrayal inside his circle, then Kiera wasn't just a witness. She was a target. Preston felt the chill of realization run down his spine. Not only had his daughter been pulled from a park in broad daylight, now a stranger was walking the city streets, carrying proof that could unravel everything. And if they silenced Addison's witness before he found her, Preston might never learn the truth. What exactly did Kiera see that night, and would she survive long enough to tell him? Preston stared at his phone like it was a weapon. 2 nights in a row the girl had called him, always around midnight, always from a blocked number. Her voice was shaky, but her words cut like glass. Each call left him rattled but somehow closer to the truth. Tonight the phone stayed dark. No vibration. No buzz. Just silence. He tried convincing himself she was safe, that maybe she had gone into hiding, maybe even left town. But the longer the hours stretched, the more that silence felt like a grave. And that terrified him. Because silence in this situation didn't mean peace. It meant danger. He thought of the way Kiera's voice trembled when she said, "They're watching me too." If that was true, then silence wasn't her choice. It was forced on her. He paced his penthouse, the city skyline glowing cold and merciless outside his windows. He had the power to summon lawyers, private investigators, even entire teams of ex-federal agents at a snap of his fingers. But Kiera had chosen to call him directly. Why risk her life for a man she'd never met? That question dug into his mind until he finally picked up the phone and dialed the contact, Detective Carla Monroe. She wasn't officially on his payroll, but she'd owed him a favor since the scandal 3 years ago. Carla answered on the second ring. Her tone was sharp, annoyed. "You calling me at midnight means someone's bleeding. Who is it?" Preston hesitated, then told her everything. The calls, the girl, the carousel, the accusation. Carla didn't breathe for a long moment. "Do you realize what you're saying?" she asked. "If this girl saw what you claim she did, then she's sitting on evidence that could burn more than your security team. This is bigger." "Bigger how?" "Because Riverside Park has cameras, Preston. And if the tapes match her story, you're not dealing with a kidnapping, you're dealing with a conspiracy." The line went quiet. Too quiet. Preston checked the screen thinking the call had dropped. But it hadn't. Carla was gone. The line hadn't ended. She had simply stopped talking. And in that dead silence, Preston heard it. A faint, metallic click, like another line had joined the call. His blood ran cold. Who else was listening, and why cut Carla's words short at the very moment the truth was about to surface? By morning, Preston couldn't take it anymore. He ordered his driver to take him straight to Riverside Park. No meetings. No guards. No calls. Just him, alone, chasing ghosts in broad daylight. The park looked ordinary enough. Families pushed strollers, joggers cut through the trails, kids shrieked from the playground. But to Preston, the whole scene felt staged, like a movie set hiding something sinister beneath the props. The carousel still spun in its usual rhythm, cheerful music masking the memory of screams. He walked closer, eyes sweeping every detail. The chipped paint on the horses, the gum stuck beneath the railing, the small ticket booth with faded stickers from last summer. He stopped at the spot Kiera had described, the place where the van had pulled up. At first it looked like any other patch of pavement. But then his eyes caught it, a faint skid mark, barely visible. Someone had left in a hurry. Preston crouched down, running his fingers over the asphalt. It wasn't proof, but it was enough to confirm the girl's story in his mind. He stood again, scanning the crowd, hoping, no, praying, that Kiera would appear. He imagined her slipping out from behind a bench, whispering fresh truths that would point him to Addison. But the park gave him nothing but strangers' faces. Then something caught his eye near the trash can. A small object, glinting in the sunlight. He stepped closer. It was Addison's hair clip, the one she wore the day she disappeared. His chest tightened. How had no one else seen it? Why was it left behind? Too neat. Too deliberate. Almost like it had been placed there. He picked it up, clutching it in his hand until his knuckles turned white. That's when his phone buzzed. A known number. His heart leapt. Could it be Kiera? He answered quickly, whispering, "Where are you?" But it wasn't her voice. It was a man's. Calm, steady, and filled with menace. "You shouldn't have come here alone, Preston." The line went dead. Preston froze, realizing the truth in an instant. This wasn't just a search for his daughter anymore. He had stepped into the center of a trap. If they knew he was at Riverside, how long before they made their move? And was Kiera already gone for good? Preston's hand still shook from that call. The words echoed in his head, "You shouldn't have come here alone." He lifted his eyes from the phone and scanned the park again. Only now, everything felt different. Every stranger's face looked suspicious. The jogger tying his shoelaces. The man feeding pigeons near the fountain. Even the two women chatting on the bench, they could be watching him, reporting every move. The air thickened with paranoia. He pocketed Addison's hair clip and walked fast, not running but moving with purpose. He wanted to leave the park, but something inside him said he couldn't, not yet. Not until he understood why that hair clip was sitting out in plain view. Because it wasn't lost. It was left. And whoever left it wanted him to find it. He thought about Kiera again, about her warning that his security team already knew. If she was right, then even his most trusted men could have been part of this. Maybe that's why she called him instead of the police. Maybe she knew the circle of betrayal ran deeper than he imagined. A child's laugh broke through his thoughts. He turned. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, stood by the carousel holding cotton candy. For one heart-stopping second, Preston thought it was Addison. Same dark hair, same small frame. He rushed forward, calling out, "Addison!" The girl spun around. Not Addison. Just a stranger. The child's eyes widened, and she hurried to her mother, who looked back at Preston like he was dangerous. He felt the judgment in her stare, the silent accusation. "Why are you running after my child?" He turned away quickly, heat rushing to his face. That's when he noticed it, behind the carousel, in the shade of a tree, a figure watching him. Small. Thin. A hoodie pulled up, hiding most of the face. "Kiera." Relief slammed into him like a tidal wave. She was alive. She was here. He started toward her. She raised a hand, signaling him to stop. Then, slowly, she pulled the hood lower over her face and pointed to her ear. A warning. Someone was listening. Before he could react, she turned and bolted into the crowd. Preston pushed through strollers, weaving between families, trying to keep her in sight. But Kiera was fast. Too fast. The crowd swallowed her, and in seconds she was gone. He stopped in the middle of the walkway, chest heaving, heart pounding like a war drum. The spot where she had stood was now empty. All that remained was the echo of her warning. If Kiera was being watched, then who in that park, right now, was watching him too? By the time Preston made it back to the carousel, the cheerful music sounded mocking, almost sinister. He felt like a puppet on invisible strings, pulled into a performance someone else was directing. He scanned the benches, the fountain, the swings. Families went on with their day, but Preston couldn't shake the feeling that none of it was real. The park had turned into a stage, and he was the lone fool stumbling through his lines. Then his eyes locked onto something near the playground. A piece of paper fluttered against the fence, held by a single piece of tape. At first it looked like litter, but its neat placement caught his attention. He walked closer. His pulse quickened. It wasn't just paper, it was a photo. His daughter's photo. Addison on the day of her birthday last year, smiling wide, a pink bow in her hair. But across the photo, written in black marker, were the words, "Stop digging." Preston's knees nearly buckled. This wasn't a random abduction. This was personal. He snatched the photo, scanning the area for anyone watching. But everyone looked normal. A kid on the swing. A father pushing a stroller. A couple holding hands. No one seemed out of place. Yet Preston felt exposed, targeted, as if every pair of eyes belonged to the enemy. The message was clear. Whoever had his daughter wasn't asking for money. They were sending warnings. They wanted control. But why? His phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a blocked number. It was Addison's contact. His heart leapt, hope crashing against fear. He answered on the first ring. Her voice came through, calm, rehearsed. Too rehearsed. "Daddy, don't come looking for me. I chose to leave." The line cut before he could reply. For a moment, Preston just stood there, staring at the playground, at the swings moving gently in the breeze. It didn't make sense. Addison would never say that. Not willingly. Someone was scripting her words. His chest ached, not just with fear, but with something darker, betrayal. His daughter's voice, his own flesh and blood, had just told him to stop searching. But Preston Caldwell wasn't a man who stopped. Not now. Not ever. If Addison wanted him to stop, was she lying under duress? Or had she truly chosen to vanish from his life? The photo burned in Preston's hand. Stop digging. The words haunted him. All his life, Preston Caldwell had been the man people feared to cross. Banks bent to his will. Politicians courted his approval. Rivals knew better than to play games with him. But this was different. This wasn't business. This was blood. For the first time he felt powerless. He walked to his black SUV parked near the entrance, sliding inside and slamming the door. His driver, Alice, glanced back. "Everything all right, sir?" Preston hesitated. Alice had worked for him for 10 years. Loyal, quiet, dependable. Yet tonight, every face carried doubt. Kiera's warning played on a loop. "I think your security team already knew." He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out his phone and stared at Addison's last text message from days ago. "Love you, Dad. Be home by 8. That ordinary message now felt like a farewell. His chest tightened. Should he call the police? He had the resources to make them move fast. But if Kiera was right, the police might already be compromised, or worse, connected to the very people orchestrating this nightmare. If he told them, he risked Addison's life. If he stayed silent, he risked losing her forever. The dilemma gnawed at him. For a man used to control, indecision was the cruelest punishment. He leaned back in the seat, closing his eyes, replaying Addison's voice. It hadn't sounded like a hostage. It had sounded rehearsed, almost willing. That was the part that stabbed deepest. Because what if it was true? What if she had chosen to leave? The thought left a bitter taste in his mouth. Preston had given her everything. A penthouse overlooking Central Park, summers in the Hamptons, a private education most kids could only dream of. But maybe, in showering her with everything, he had failed to give her what mattered most. Freedom. Ellis cleared his throat, breaking his thoughts. Where to, sir? Preston's jaw clenched. He didn't know. For once in his life he didn't have a plan. But one thing was clear, whoever had set this up knew him well. Too well. They knew his habits, his weaknesses, even his blind spots. That kind of access wasn't random. It had to come from inside. Preston realized his greatest danger wasn't out on the streets. It was sitting right next to him in his own car. The next morning, Preston gathered his core security team inside his Midtown office. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the skyline, but the view did nothing to calm him. 4 men sat before him, his most trusted protectors. Men he had known for years. Men who had sworn loyalty. Last night, he began, voice low and cutting, my daughter was taken from Riverside Park. Someone in this room either failed me, or betrayed me. A tense silence followed. None of them looked shocked. That was what unsettled him most. First was Ellis, his driver. Then Marcus, his chief of security, broad-shouldered and disciplined. Then Blake and Rami, the younger guards, sharp, eager, always by Addison's side. Preston slammed the photo onto the table. Addison's birthday smile stared back at them with "Stop digging" scrawled across it. Explain this. Marcus leaned forward. Sir, none of us left our posts last night. We were stationed at the gala, exactly where you instructed. Preston's lip curled. That's your alibi? That you were following orders? Blake spoke next, eyes darting nervously. We had eyes on Addison until late afternoon. After that, she slipped away from the driver. We thought she was meeting friends. She's done it before. The words hit Preston like a blade. She's done it before. How many times had Addison slipped past them without his knowledge? And why hadn't they told him? Why wasn't I informed? His voice thundered. Silence. Rami finally muttered, because you'd have blamed us, sir. And you usually do. The honesty stung. They weren't wrong. Preston had built his empire on fear and control, and now that same culture was snapping back at him like a whip. But then Marcus said something that froze the air. Mr. Caldwell, what if Addison wanted us to look the other way? Preston's hands tightened into fists. He scanned their faces. They all looked uneasy but not guilty. Yet Kiera's warning whispered in his mind. Your security team already knew. Trust was eroding fast, like sand slipping through his fingers. He leaned forward, eyes sharp. If any of you are lying to me, understand this. Money can't protect you from what comes next. The men shifted in their seats. For the first time, Preston saw not protectors but suspects. As he dismissed the team, a notification buzzed on his phone. An anonymous message with just 2 words. Ask Kiera. The anonymous text stared back at Preston. Ask Kiera. It wasn't a threat. It was a direction. Almost like someone wanted him to follow the trail. But why? He sat alone in his office long after the security team had left. Manhattan glittered outside, but the city lights looked cold, distant, unfeeling. For the first time in years, Preston Caldwell didn't feel like the man in control of the skyline. He felt like a pawn inside it. He opened his laptop and pulled up every record he could find. Addison's phone logs. Security camera feeds from Riverside Park. Even internal company files, because if Kiera was right, the rot might be inside his empire. Then he saw it. Surveillance footage from the night before. The carousel spinning, children laughing. And there, barely visible, Addison standing by the horses. Seconds later, a white van slowed near the edge of the park. But the chilling part wasn't the van. It was who walked past Addison at that exact moment. Blake, his youngest guard. Blake glanced at Addison, then at the van, then kept walking as if he hadn't seen a thing. Preston replayed it 5 times, each time feeling his blood pressure climb. Blake hadn't just missed it. He had looked, hesitated, and chose not to act. The first crack had appeared. He picked up his phone, ready to call Marcus, but stopped. What if Marcus already knew? What if they all knew? Instead, he dialed the number traced to Kiera's first call. It rang twice, then went dead. Minutes later, another text appeared. She doesn't trust you. Meet her alone. Preston grabbed his coat. He told no one where he was going. That night, under the buzzing neon glow of a Harlem corner store, he finally saw her again. Kiera. Hood pulled low, hands trembling as she clutched a cheap flip phone. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. Preston stepped closer. Neither should you. Her eyes flicked over his shoulder, scanning the street. Fear lived in every movement. Addison isn't safe, she said quickly. And it's not strangers. It's people close to you. People you pay. Preston's chest tightened. She was confirming what he already feared. But before he could press her for more, a black SUV rolled past the corner, headlights cutting across their faces. Kiera froze, then bolted down the alley. Preston shouted her name, chasing, but by the time he turned the corner, she was gone. In the silence of the alley, Preston found something Kiera had dropped. Addison's bracelet. Preston staggered into his penthouse with Addison's bracelet still clutched in his hand. The gold chain was warm from his palm, its little heart-shaped charm scratched and bent. This was no coincidence. Kiera hadn't just dropped it, she'd left it for him. Proof that Addison was alive. Proof she'd been close. And yet, instead of comfort, the discovery broke him. He poured a glass of whiskey, then another. By the third, his reflection in the window looked like a stranger. Dark eyes hollow, jaw tight, tie hanging loose around his neck. For years, he'd played the role of the untouchable billionaire. Every headline painted him as ruthless, powerful, unbending. But none of that mattered now. What good was power when you couldn't even protect your own child? He slammed the glass against the counter, shards scattering across the marble. His hand bled, but he didn't care. The silence in the penthouse pressed on him like a weight. Addison's room was just down the hall. Pink curtains, stuffed animals still lined neatly on the shelves. He walked inside, the air thick with the faint smell of her perfume. He sat on the edge of her bed and buried his face in his hands. What if Addison had chosen to leave? What if all the money, the guards, the constant control had smothered her? What if she wanted freedom from him? The thought gutted him. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps on the door. Preston froze. It was after midnight. No one should be here. He grabbed the pistol from his desk drawer and approached slowly. When he opened the door, Marcus stood there, face grim. "Sir," he said quietly, "we need to talk. About Blake." Preston's grip on the gun tightened. Marcus continued, voice low and deliberate. "He's not who you think he is. He's been feeding information. Not just to strangers, to someone inside your circle. I don't know who. But if you keep trusting the wrong person, you'll lose her for good." Preston's blood ran cold. His worst fear was unfolding, and Marcus's words only deepened the nightmare. Before Preston could respond, his phone lit up again. Another call from Addison. This time her voice was screaming. The sound of his daughter's scream ripped through Preston's phone like a knife. "Addison," he shouted, nearly dropping the device. The line crackled, distorted by static, but her voice was clear, terrified, desperate. "Daddy, help?" Then a muffled thud. The call cut out. Preston stood frozen in the doorway of his penthouse, Marcus watching him with wide eyes. The room spun. His chest tightened, his throat closing as panic surged. "She's alive," Marcus said, stepping forward. "But they want you to hear her like that. They're playing with you." Preston's hand trembled around the phone. His instincts screamed at him to call the police, to unleash every resource he had, but Kiara's warning echoed in his mind. They already knew. He clenched his jaw. "Trace it." Marcus frowned. "That's risky. If they're masking the signal." "Trace it," Preston barked. Within minutes his tech team was scrambling. But the trace bounced across towers, ending at a dead zone near Queens. Nothing useful. It was intentional. A breadcrumb, not a destination. And that terrified him more than anything, because it meant whoever had Addison was controlling the game. Each call wasn't random. It was a script. He sank into his chair, head in his hands, the bracelet still digging into his palm. He thought of Addison's last real smile. The way she'd hugged him after her recital. The way she called him Dad when no one else was listening. But the voice on the phone, was it even really her? Or had they recorded her? Paranoia gnawed at him. Marcus placed a hand on his shoulder. "Preston, you need to prepare yourself. If your own men are compromised, we're dealing with something bigger than money. This is personal." Preston lifted his eyes. Cold. Hollow. Determined. "Then I'll burn it all down until I find out who's behind it." His phone buzzed again, this time not a call but a video. Addison, blindfolded, whispering just one word, "Kiara." The video was shaky, filmed in dim light. Addison sat on a chair, blindfold covering her eyes, hands tied in front of her. Her voice trembled yet carried a rehearsed weight. "Daddy, don't come looking for me. I chose to leave." Then the screen went black. Preston stared at the phone like it was poison. His hands shook, not with fear, but with rage. "She didn't mean that," he muttered. "She wouldn't say that." Marcus leaned in. "Look at her body language. The way she's sitting. The hesitation. She's being coached." But the words still cut deep. For Preston, the idea of his daughter rejecting him was worse than any ransom note. "I gave her everything," he said, pacing the room. "Everything she ever wanted. And she chooses to leave." Marcus raised a brow. "You're asking the wrong question. It's not about what she wants, it's about who wants her to say it." Preston stopped. Marcus was right. The video wasn't about Addison's choice. It was about power. About making him doubt himself. And it was working. His mind twisted in circles. If Addison was acting under duress, then someone had her right now. But if she had willingly participated, then the betrayal was even sharper. He couldn't decide which truth hurt more. That night, unable to sleep, Preston scrolled through old videos of Addison on his phone. Birthday parties, piano recitals, candid moments when she didn't know she was being filmed. Her laugh echoed through the dark penthouse. And with it came a realization. The girl in those videos, the real Addison, wasn't the same one in the hostage clip. Which meant she was alive. Fighting. Sending him a message he wasn't meant to miss. Kiara's name was the key. Preston clenched his fists. He had been looking for his daughter. But maybe the only way to find Addison was to first find Kiara. At 3 a.m., his phone buzzed again. this time with a live location ping. From Kiara's phone. The live ping glowed on Preston's phone like a taunt, an old brick apartment complex in East Harlem. At 3 a.m., the streets were nearly empty, save for the occasional cab or siren echoing in the distance. Preston's black SUV rolled to a stop at the corner, Marcus at the wheel. "You're sure about this?" Marcus asked, scanning the block. This could be bait. Preston adjusted his cufflinks, though his hands trembled. If Kiara's phone is here, then Addison's trail is here. I can't ignore it. The two stepped out. Streetlights flickered. The building loomed, windows boarded on the lower floors. Inside, the air smelled of mildew and dust. Every step echoed through the narrow stairwell. On the fourth floor, a faint ringtone cut through the silence. Preston's chest tightened. Kiara's phone. He rushed down the hall, following the sound until he reached a door cracked open. Inside was a single chair in the center of an empty room. On it, Kiara's phone vibrating. The screen flashed, incoming call, unknown. Marcus grabbed Preston's wrist. Don't answer. But Preston did. A distorted voice filled the room. You're exactly where I wanted you. Preston's throat went dry. Where is she? The voice ignored him. You think this is about money? It isn't. Every move you've made has been predicted. Every step written before you ever took it. The phone clicked. A pre-recorded video began to play. It was Addison again. Same blindfold, same chair. Only this time her voice carried no fear. Daddy, please stop. You're ruining everything. I'm safer here than I ever was with you. The video ended. Preston's knees weakened. Marcus shook his head. This isn't Addison talking. It's a script. Someone's feeding her the lines. But Preston's heart twisted. Because deep down he feared there was truth in her words. As they turned to leave, Marcus froze. Spray painted on the wall in huge black letters were two words, Trust Kiara. The words on the wall clung to Preston's mind like a brand. Trust Kiara. But how could he? She was the one who made the first call, the one who dragged him into this nightmare. Back in the SUV, Marcus broke the silence. Someone wants you to believe she's not the enemy. That she's on Addison's side. Preston's jaw tightened. Or someone wants me blind. Maybe Kiara set this all up. Maybe she's the reason my daughter is gone. The city blurred past the windows as he spoke. Neon lights smeared across the glass, mirroring his fractured thoughts. When they pulled into the garage beneath his penthouse, Preston couldn't shake the gnawing paranoia. He poured himself a drink, ignoring the clock. At 5 a.m., his phone buzzed again. A text. No name. Just a number. It read, If you want Addison alive, stop blaming Kiara. Meet me at Battery Park, 6:30. Marcus read it over his shoulder. Trap. Of course it's a trap, Preston muttered, slipping the bracelet back into his pocket. But I don't have the luxury of caution. The sun hadn't yet risen when they arrived at the waterfront. The air was sharp, the smell of salt and diesel drifting off the harbor. No one was there at first. Then a figure appeared near the benches. A hood pulled low. Hands stuffed in pockets. Preston's pulse hammered. The figure lifted her head. Kiara. Her eyes were bloodshot, her face pale. She looked nothing like the calm, confident caller from that first night. Where is my daughter? Preston demanded, striding toward her. Kiara raised her hands. I'm not your enemy. You called me. You dragged me into this. You made me think she was taken. Her voice cracked. She was taken. But not the way you think. Preston stepped closer, fury radiating off him. Speak. Kiara's lips trembled as she whispered, Addison wasn't kidnapped. She left with me, because she wanted to escape you. The words landed like a gunshot. Before Preston could respond, a black van screeched to the curb. Masked men spilled out, guns raised, not at Preston but at Kiera. The screech of tires ripped through Battery Park's silence. Preston spun around just as the black van skidded to a halt. Doors flung open and 3 masked men leapt out, guns pointed, not at him but straight at Kiera. For a split second, confusion outpaced fear. If this was about Addison, why target the girl who claimed to help? Run! Marcus barked, shoving Preston behind a bench. But Kiera froze like a cornered rabbit. One of the men lunged forward, grabbing her by the arm. She shrieked, twisting away. The sound carried across the empty park, desperate and sharp. Preston's instincts flared. He couldn't just watch. "Let her go!" he roared, surging out from cover. A gun swung toward him. Marcus fired first, his own pistol cracking in the dawn. The shot echoed off the water. One of the masked men staggered back, clutching his shoulder. Chaos exploded. Kiera kicked and clawed as another man tried to shove her into the van. Her hoodie tore, revealing scratches across her collarbone, fresh, angry marks. "Help me!" she screamed. Preston lunged, grabbing the man's wrist, wrenching it until the gun clattered to the ground. They grappled, fists flying, until Marcus pulled him free. The van roared to life, engine revving. The driver shouted something in a language Preston didn't recognize. The men retreated, dragging their injured companion inside. The van sped off, leaving only the smell of burnt rubber, and Kiera collapsed on the pavement, gasping. Preston stood over her, chest heaving. His silk shirt clung to him with sweat. Kiera looked up, tears streaking her face. "Now do you believe me? They're not after Addison. They're after me." Her voice cracked into silence. Preston bent to question her, but she shoved something into his palm, a folded note stained with dirt. Inside, scribbled in Addison's handwriting, "Daddy, trust her. Please." The note trembled in Preston's hand. Addison's handwriting. Clear, distinct, undeniable. He swallowed hard. His daughter wasn't just alive, she was deliberately leaving him messages. But why through Kiera? Marcus leaned close, whispering, "This changes everything. She's in contact with your daughter. We need answers now." Kiera sat slumped against the bench, clutching her side. Her breaths were shallow. "I didn't want you dragged into this. But you left me no choice." Preston crouched in front of her. "Then tell me everything. No more riddles." She shook her head weakly. "Not here. Too many eyes. Too many years. But there's someone who saw everything that night." His pulse quickened. "Who?" "A man. He works the carousel at Riverside Park. Name's Emilio. Everyone ignored him because he's undocumented. They think his word doesn't matter. But he saw it all." Preston's thoughts reeled. A man overlooked, invisible to the system. A man who might hold the truth no detective bothered to ask for. Marcus frowned. "If this is real, why didn't you come forward sooner?" Kiera's eyes filled with anger. "Because people like me don't get listened to. Because if I'd walked into your world, you'd have shut me down before I said a word." The words stung. Preston opened his mouth to respond, but her voice grew faint. "Find Emilio. He'll tell you why Addison left." Her head dropped back, exhaustion pulling her under. Marcus cursed under his breath. "We need to get her safe. Then we track this Emilio." But Preston's gaze lingered on the note in his hand, the loops and curls of Addison's writing. It was like she was reaching out, guiding him step by step. He folded it slowly, slipping it into his pocket like treasure. As Marcus hoisted Kiera into the SUV, Preston's phone buzzed again, a photo message. It showed Emilio bloodied and bound to a chair. Caption, "Too late." The SUV barreled through lower Manhattan as dawn cracked against the skyline. Preston's fists clenched against his knees, knuckles white. The image of Emilio bound and bleeding wouldn't leave his mind. Whoever sent it was watching, tracking every move. Kiera stirred weakly in the back seat. "They'll kill him if you don't move fast." Preston turned. "Why him? Why Emilio?" Her voice broke. "Because he saw who planned it. He saw who paid for Addison's disappearance." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Name. We need a name." But Kiera only shook her head, tears pooling. "I can't. Not yet. You'll think I'm lying." Frustration clawed at Preston. Time was slipping and the city felt like a maze with no exit. Then his phone buzzed again, this time a video. The screen lit up with Emilio's trembling face. A masked figure pressed a blade against his throat. "Stop searching. Walk away, Caldwell. Or he dies." The vanishing point of choice stretched in front of Preston. Give up or dive deeper. Marcus swore under his breath. "They're hurting us. Making sure we dance to their rhythm." Preston's eyes narrowed. "Then we change the music." He leaned forward, gripping the seat. "Kiera, where do they keep him?" Her silence was answer enough. She didn't know. The SUV sped past Times Square's flashing screens, each one a cruel reminder of how public Preston's life was. But this wasn't boardrooms and contracts. This was blood and betrayal. Kiera whispered finally, "If we find Emilio, you'll see what Addison really wanted." Her words hung in the air like prophecy. Just then, Preston's phone lit up with a live GPS pin, Emilio's location flashing red inside a crumbling warehouse in Red Hook, Brooklyn. The SUV screeched to a halt outside the Red Hook warehouse. Rusted corrugated metal, broken windows, and graffiti stretched across its surface like scars. Preston's heart hammered. Somewhere inside, a man's life ticked down like a clock. Marcus loaded his pistol, scanning the shadows. "This stinks. They want us here." Preston ignored him, storming toward the heavy doors. "He's the only one who can tell me why Addison left. We don't get a second chance." Inside, the air reeked of mold and iron. Shafts of light pierced the dust, cutting through the dark like blades. And then, movement. Emilio slumped in a chair, ropes biting into his arms, gag muffling his groans. Blood streaked his cheek. Preston rushed forward. "Emilio, hold on." But Marcus's instinct screamed. He yanked Preston back just as a red laser sight danced across Emilio's chest. A sniper. Gunfire ripped through the silence, bullets sparking against the concrete. Emilio thrashed, chair toppling. "Cover!" Marcus shouted, firing toward the rafters. Shadows darted above, footsteps pounding metal grates. Preston crawled forward, desperation overriding fear. He reached Emilio, cutting at the ropes with trembling hands. "Tell me," Preston demanded. "Who's behind this? Who took Addison?" Emilio's eyes bulged, choking on words. Finally he spat out a single name, one Preston never expected. The name echoed through the warehouse, louder than the gunfire, more dangerous than any bullet. Before Emilio could finish, a deafening explosion tore through the warehouse, flames swallowing his words, and maybe the truth itself. Smoke choked the night sky, thick and oily. The warehouse blazed like a funeral pyre, flames chewing through steel. Preston stumbled outside with Marcus dragging him by the arm. His ears rang from the blast, but one word pulsed in his skull. The name Emilio had screamed before fire silenced him. A name Preston knew. A name tied to his own empire. Kiera stumbled after them, coughing hard. Who was it? What did he say? Preston's lips parted, but no sound came. The truth was too vile to release yet. Fire trucks wailed in the distance, their sirens bouncing off the Hudson. Marcus shoved Preston into the SUV. "We can't stay. Whoever set that trap knows if Emilio didn't finish, we'll still be digging." Preston's hands shook. He looked at Kiera, her face smudged with soot, eyes wide with expectation. She had risked everything. But how could he tell her the name belonged to someone from inside his boardroom? His phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a threat, it was a photo. Addison, sitting at a table in some dimly lit room, her hair pulled back, looking older than her years. A man stood behind her, hand resting on her shoulder. Preston's breath caught. The man's face wasn't masked. It was familiar. A longtime partner. Someone he trusted with multimillion-dollar deals. Kiera saw the photo, her lips trembling. That's him. That's the man who spoke to the men in the van. Preston's world tilted. His business partner wasn't just involved. He was holding Addison. Preston whispered the name at last, Luther Grant, and Kiera's face drained of color. "You don't understand, he's not just your partner. He's her godfather." The SUV roared across the Brooklyn Bridge, city lights slicing through the darkness. Preston's chest tightened with every passing second. Addison's godfather. A man he trusted like family. The betrayal cut deeper than any bullet. Kiera leaned forward, her voice urgent. "This isn't just about money. Addison wasn't kidnapped the way you think." Preston snapped his gaze to her. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then pulled a crumpled notebook from her pocket. The edges were singed from the warehouse blast. She handed it over. Preston opened it. Inside were sketches, maps, scribbled journal entries, all in Addison's handwriting. Each page painted a chilling picture. Addison had known she was being watched. She had tracked meetings, coded dates, even drawn diagrams of vans near the park. His throat tightened. She was investigating them, on her own? Kiera nodded. "She told me she didn't trust the people closest to her. She thought Luther was hiding something." Preston flipped another page and froze. There in Addison's bold script, "If I disappear, it's because I wanted to expose him. Daddy must never trust Luther." Marcus cursed under his breath. She staged her own abduction to uncover the truth. But she underestimated how deep Luther's reach goes. Preston felt the walls close in. His daughter had been walking a tightrope, and every move she made pulled Kiera deeper into danger. For the first time, Preston saw his daughter not as a victim, but as a strategist, a girl trying to beat powerful men at their own game. Just as Preston whispered, "She's alive and she's fighting," his phone buzzed with a new video, Addison staring into the camera, whispering, "Daddy, stop searching. Trust only Kiera. Anyone else could kill me." The video replayed in Preston's hands, Addison's voice soft yet razor-sharp, "Trust only Kiera." He sat frozen in the SUV, Manhattan skyline glowing in the distance. The message wasn't just a warning, it was an indictment. Kiera leaned forward. "She's telling you Luther isn't the only danger." Preston turned slowly. "What are you saying?" Her eyes burned. "Your entire circle can't be trusted. Even the men you pay to protect her. The betrayal goes deeper than one godfather." Marcus stiffened. "Careful what you're suggesting." Kiera's voice cracked. "You don't get it. One of your own security guards called me before Riverside Park. He told me something was about to happen. He wanted me to save her because he knew you wouldn't believe anyone else." Preston's stomach twisted. One of his men had known, and stayed silent. He looked at Marcus, searching for reassurance, but Marcus avoided his eyes. "Boss, this whole thing, it's bigger than any of us imagined." "Bigger, yes." But Preston couldn't ignore the truth anymore. His empire was built on loyalty bought with money. And now money had bought their silence, maybe even their betrayal. Kiera whispered, Addison's fight isn't just against Luther. It's against the world you built around her. The words hit like a blade. Preston's phone buzzed again. This time, a message not from Addison but from Luther himself. Meet me alone. Midnight. If you bring anyone, she dies. The SUV pulled into Preston's private garage, the city humming above them. Preston sat in silence, Luther's text glowing on his screen. All his wealth, his power, his influence, it had blinded him. He had built towers across Manhattan but failed to see the cracks inside his own home. Kiera spoke softly. You never asked why Addison spent so much time at Riverside Park. It wasn't for the carousel. She was meeting me. She wanted someone who understood being invisible. Preston turned, shock rippling through him. She trusted you more than her own father? Kiera's chin trembled. Because I listened. You didn't. The words stung worse than the warehouse fire. He remembered the last time Addison begged him to skip a meeting, to spend time with her instead. He brushed her off, telling her skyscrapers couldn't build themselves. Now skyscrapers meant nothing. Marcus interrupted. We can't walk into Luther's trap blind. We need eyes everywhere. Preston shook his head. No. If Addison trusts Kiera more than me, then she'll be the one who goes with me. Kiera flinched. You sure you can take orders from a girl who grew up dodging security guards and eviction notices? Her defiance was a mirror of Addison. Preston finally nodded. If that's what it takes to bring my daughter home, then yes. The billionaire was finally admitting what Addison always knew. Money couldn't buy truth. As Preston prepared for the midnight meeting, Marcus stepped outside to take a call. Through the glass, Kiera caught his lips moving, and saw him whisper Luther's name. The hours crawled toward midnight. Preston paced his penthouse, the city glittering beyond the glass like it didn't care a girl's life was dangling by a thread. Kiera sat curled on the sofa, her notebook clutched against her chest. Preston could see she was holding herself together with sheer will. Then glass shattered. Masked men stormed the room, moving with military precision. Marcus pulled his gun, but two rifles swung toward him. His hesitation lasted only a second, but it was enough. They didn't go for Preston. They went for Kiera. She fought like a cornered animal, kicking and clawing as they dragged her toward the broken window. Her screams sliced through the penthouse. Addison trusted me, she shrieked. Don't let them. Her words cut off as a fist slammed into her jaw. Preston lunged forward, rage burning, but a gun barrel pressed to his temple froze him in place. One of the masked men hissed in his ear, You'll meet Luther on his terms or she dies first. Then just like that, they were gone, rope descending from the rooftop, vanishing into the New York night with Kiera dangling between them. Preston stood frozen, shards of glass crunching under his shoes, Marcus breathing hard beside him. His daughter's only ally was gone, ripped from his home as if walls meant nothing. Preston's phone buzzed once more. A live stream. Kiera tied to a chair, gagged, Luther's voice in the background. One girl for another. Choose wisely, Preston. The black SUV cut through the midnight streets, engine growling like a beast. Preston sat rigid in the back seat, Luther's message replaying in his head. One girl for another. It wasn't just ransom. It was psychological torture. Marcus drove in silence, but Preston's mind reeled. If he chose Addison, Kiera would die. If he chose Kiera, his own daughter might never forgive him. They pulled up to the meeting point, an abandoned shipping yard on Staten Island. Fog clung to the ground, cranes looming like skeletons. Floodlights blazed on. Shadows moved across the docks. And then Luther appeared. Come. Smiling. A man who once toasted with Preston at charity galas now looked like a wolf baring teeth. Beside him, two chairs. Kiera bound in one, Addison in the other. Both gagged. Both terrified. Preston's knees nearly buckled. His daughter, alive, close enough to touch. But her wide eyes begged him to notice something else, something deeper. Luther spread his arms. Choose, Preston. Which girl do you value more? The daughter of your blood, or the stranger who risked everything for her? The words dripped with venom. A test of loyalty, designed to shatter him from the inside. Preston's chest heaved. For the first time in his life, money couldn't buy the answer. Just as Preston opened his mouth, Addison ripped the gag from her lips and shouted, "Don't save me, save her." The dockyard fell silent. Only the waves slapped against rusted metal. Preston's heart pounded so loudly he thought it would echo through the floodlights. Addison's cry still rang in his ears, "Don't save me, save her." Luther smirked, savoring every second. "You see, Preston? Even your daughter knows where your weakness lies. But weakness is what destroys kings." Kiera shook her head violently, gagged, eyes wide with terror. She wasn't asking to be saved. She was warning him. Preston's lips parted, but before he could speak, Marcus stepped forward, gun drawn. "Boss, let me handle this. I'll take the shot." Preston froze. Marcus's voice carried too much certainty, too much calm. And then it clicked, the whispered phone call Kiera saw earlier. He wasn't here to save Addison. He was here to ensure the exchange went Luther's way. Preston's chest tightened. His most trusted man, his shadow for over a decade, was part of the betrayal. "Marcus," Preston whispered, "tell me this isn't true." Marcus didn't flinch. His gun shifted from Luther to Preston. "It's bigger than you, boss. Bigger than Addison. The city doesn't need kings anymore. It needs control." The air turned to ice. Preston realized he wasn't just fighting Luther tonight. He was fighting the empire he had built, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. A gunshot exploded across the dockyard. Kiera screamed through her gag, and Addison's chair toppled backward into the shadows. Chaos ripped through the docks. Preston dove as the shot rang out, gravel scraping his palms. Addison's chair was gone, dragged into the darkness by Luther's men. Kiera's muffled cries grew louder as she thrashed against her ropes. Floodlights swung wildly, shadows cutting across steel containers stacked like tombs. Preston crawled toward cover, adrenaline burning away fear. He didn't know if Addison was alive or bleeding out. He only knew he couldn't lose her, not now. Then he spotted it. Marcus disappearing behind a row of shipping containers, speaking rapidly into a phone. Preston followed at a distance, straining to catch the words. "Moving her now, the warehouse on Long Island, nobody follows." The truth landed like a punch. This dockyard was just theater, a stage designed to break him. Addison's real prison was miles away. He turned back toward Kiera, still bound to the chair. She was fighting so hard her wrists bled, but her eyes burned with the same fire he saw in Addison. Preston crouched beside her, pulling the gag free. She gasped, "Go after her. Don't waste time on me." But Preston shook his head, cutting through her panic. "Addison trusted you. She saw something in you I didn't. I'm not leaving you behind." His fingers worked fast, untying knots. For the first time in years, Preston felt more like a father than a billionaire. As the last rope snapped free, Kiera whispered, "If the warehouse is real, then you'll need me to find it. Luther's men know every street, every back road. But I know the shortcuts." Preston looked into her determined eyes and nodded. He wasn't saving one girl over another, he was saving both. From the shadows, Luther's voice rose again, calm and taunting, "Run, Preston. But every step you take brings you closer to the wrong grave." The SUV tore across the bridge, headlights slicing through the midnight fog. Preston gripped the wheel himself, He no longer trusted Marcus or anyone else in his circle. Kiera sat beside him, still shaken but fierce, tracing routes on her phone. Don't take the expressway. Luther's people will expect that. Cut through Astoria, then slip into Queens Boulevard. I'll guide you. Preston followed her directions without hesitation. For the first time he wasn't the one in control, and strangely, it felt right. As they sped into Long Island, the skyline gave way to sprawling warehouses and empty lots. The city's heartbeat dimmed, replaced by the hollow thump of tires over cracked asphalt. Kiera pointed. There, that's the warehouse. See the smokestack? They've used it before. I know this place. Preston's chest tightened. The structure loomed in the distance, floodlights burning around its perimeter. Shadows of guards moved along the rooftop. He cut the engine 2 blocks away, heart racing. We go in together. Quietly. Kiera's breath hitched. You mean, no backup? Preston shook his head. No one left to trust. It's us. They crept through the night, slipping between rusted fences and stacks of pallets. Every step echoed like a drumbeat, every shadow felt alive. Inside, Preston could hear muffled voices, the clang of chains, the faint sob of a girl. Addison. He turned to Kiera, whispering, "This is it." Her hand trembled, but her voice was steady. Then we finish it. A steel door groaned open ahead of them, and Marcus stepped out, gun drawn, blocking their path. Marcus's silhouette filled the doorway, weapon glinting under the floodlight. His face was unreadable, but his tone was calm, almost regretful. Boss, walk away. This doesn't end with her alive. Preston's jaw clenched. You worked beside me for 15 years. You swore to protect her. Marcus's eyes hardened. I swore to protect the future. You're too blinded by blood to see it. Luther's vision, its survival. You can't buy loyalty anymore. You have to own it. Kiera's breath hitched. You sold a child for power? Marcus turned the gun toward her. Don't talk about things you don't understand, kid. Preston's pulse roared in his ears. For years he had buried betrayal with money, lawsuits, or silence. But this wasn't business. This was his daughter. Something inside him cracked. The billionaire, the tycoon, the empire builder, fell away, leaving only a desperate father. He stepped forward, voice raw. If you want me, take me. But you will not touch my daughter. And you will not hurt her friend. Marcus didn't flinch. Then this is where it ends. The gun rose, the barrel pointed straight at Preston's chest. Time slowed. Kiera shifted slightly, her hand brushing against a loose piece of rebar on the ground. Preston locked eyes with Marcus, a silent plea, a final command, a desperate hope that the years of loyalty weren't entirely gone. But Marcus's finger tightened on the trigger. Just as the shot rang out, the warehouse door behind Marcus burst open, and Addison screamed her father's name. The scream shattered Marcus's focus. Daddy. Addison's voice cut through the night like a blade, raw with fear. His aim faltered just enough. Preston lunged forward, shoving Marcus's arm upward. The gun fired, deafening inside the narrow space, the bullet sparking against steel. Chaos erupted. Addison stumbled out from the warehouse, hands tied, eyes wide with terror. 2 guards rushed behind her, but Kiera was quicker. She swung the rebar with everything she had, striking one across the face. The man crumpled. The other grabbed Addison's arm, yanking her back toward the darkness. Addison. Preston roared, throwing himself at Marcus again. Their bodies crashed against the doorframe, fists and elbows colliding in a storm of rage and betrayal. Marcus snarled, stronger than Preston remembered, his years of loyalty now curdled into something feral. She was never yours to keep, Preston. She belongs to us now. Another shot rang out, this one slicing across Preston's shoulder. Pain burned hot, but adrenaline pushed him forward. He clawed at Marcus, desperate, ferocious, nothing like the polished billionaire the world knew. Kiera screamed for him. "Mr. Caldwell, watch out." The second guard dragged Addison deeper inside, her muffled cries echoing. Kiera bolted after them, vanishing into the shadows. For a moment, Preston was torn, fight Marcus or follow Kiera. The father in him knew the answer, but Marcus blocked the doorway like a wall. Blood trickled from Preston's arm, his chest heaving. His empire, his money, his power, none of it mattered now. Only Addison. Marcus locked eyes with him, gun raised again. One more step and she dies. Inside the warehouse, Addison's sobs grew sharper, tangled with Kiera's shouts. Preston forced his battered body forward, ignoring Marcus's threat. But then, Marcus hesitated. His hand trembled just slightly. "Why?" Preston demanded, voice hoarse. "Why my daughter? Out of all the children in this city, why her?" Marcus's face twisted. "Because she's not just your daughter, Preston. She's the leverage, the bargaining chip Luther needed. She's the only one who can break you." Preston froze. The words cut deeper than any bullet. "What are you talking about?" Marcus lowered his voice, almost pitying. "Addison came to us first. She wanted out. She hated the cages you built, your schools, your security, your rules. She gave us the crack in your armor. All we had to do was step through it." The ground seemed to vanish beneath Preston's feet. His daughter chose this? Behind Marcus, Kiera's voice echoed, "Addison, don't believe them. They're lying to you." But Addison's reply was chilling. "No. I wanted this. I called them. I needed to get away." Preston's chest collapsed under the weight of her words. The girl he'd fought to protect, the child he'd sworn his empire would shield, had betrayed him? Or was she manipulated into believing it? His vision blurred, not from blood loss but from heartbreak. Marcus raised the gun again, his voice steady now. "Face it, Preston. The world doesn't need men like you anymore. Even your own daughter knows it." Addison stepped into the light, her wrists still bound, but her expression calm. "Daddy, if you love me, let me go." The warehouse lights buzzed overhead, casting Addison in a harsh white glow. She stood only a few feet away, wrists bound, but her eyes burned with something that felt older than her years. "Daddy," she repeated softly, "if you love me, let me go." The words tore at him. He'd heard them before in smaller moments. The day she begged not to have bodyguards at her school, the night she cried about being treated like a prisoner in her own home. But this was different. This wasn't teenage rebellion. This was life or death. Preston's breath came shallow, blood still dripping from his wounded shoulder. His empire, his power, his reputation, none of it had prepared him for this. He looked at Marcus, the gun still trained on him. "You twisted her," Preston spat. "You poisoned her against me." Marcus shook his head slowly. "She came willingly. All I did was show her a door you kept locked." Addison's voice cracked. "I couldn't breathe anymore, Daddy. Every friend was screened, every move tracked. You called it love, but it felt like a cage." The words stung worse than any bullet. He wanted to argue, to tell her the world was dangerous, that he only wanted her safe. But even now, with danger all around, he saw the truth in her trembling lips. Preston's hands shook. Save her or set her free. Just as he opened his mouth to answer, a loud crash echoed from the back of the warehouse. Kiera had found something. Kiera's voice rang out, urgent and breathless. "Mr. Caldwell, don't listen to them, it's all a setup." She stumbled into the light, clutching a folder she'd pulled from a desk in the shadows. Her hands shook as she flipped it open, pages scattering across the floor. "Look," she cried. "They planned everything. Addison never called them. They hacked her phone, tracked her, and staged the whole thing. This," she shoved the papers toward Preston, "this was never her choice." Preston's heart thundered. He snatched a page, eyes scanning the lines. Detailed surveillance logs. Fake transcripts of phone calls. Manipulation tactics designed to make Addison believe she'd reached out first. Marcus's face darkened. "Put that down, kid." Kiera ignored him. "They wanted to break you, Preston. They knew the only way was through your daughter. They used her loneliness against her. She's not betraying you, she's a victim." Addison's eyes widened, tears streaming. "Is that true? They lied to me?" For the first time Marcus's mask cracked. His silence was answer enough. Preston stepped forward, voice breaking. "Addison, baby girl, you never left me. They took you from me." Addison swayed on her feet, the weight of it crashing down. Every moment of doubt, every whisper she'd believed, every shred of trust stolen. Her body trembled as she whispered, "Daddy, I didn't mean it. I thought." Preston opened his arms, ready to shield her. But before she could move, Marcus cocked the gun and hissed, "Nobody leaves this building alive." The warehouse fell silent except for the hum of the floodlights and Addison's ragged breaths. Marcus stood with the gun raised, his finger steady on the trigger. "End of the line," he muttered. "Preston, you'll never leave here with her. Neither of you will." Preston slowly stepped in front of Addison, shielding her with his body. The pain in his shoulder flared, but the fire in his eyes burned brighter. "Then you'll have to kill me first." Marcus's lips curled into something between a smirk and a snarl. "That's the idea." Kiera, clutching the stolen folder, shouted, "Everyone knows now. Even if you kill us, this proof gets out. Luther's empire will crumble." Marcus's jaw twitched, but his aim didn't falter. He barked, "Shut up, girl." Addison clung to her father's shirt. "Daddy, don't. He'll kill you." Preston whispered back, "If it's my life or yours, the choice is already made." The air thickened with dread. Each second stretched. Sweat ran down Preston's temple. The metallic tang of blood filled his mouth. Marcus's finger tightened. Preston braced himself, his final thought echoing like a prayer, "Please let her live." Just as Marcus fired, a deafening crash shook the warehouse. Someone else had arrived. The gunshot split the air, but before the bullet reached Preston, Marcus staggered backward. A pipe clanged to the floor beside him. Behind him stood Kiera, her chest heaving, her face streaked with dirt and tears. She had struck him with everything she had, saving Preston in the heartbeat between life and death. Marcus roared in pain, spinning around, the gun waving wildly. Another shot cracked, this one tearing through a metal beam above their heads, sparks raining down. Preston lunged, fueled by rage and desperation. He tackled Marcus to the ground, fists pounding, years of betrayal and heartbreak unleashed in brutal strikes. The two men rolled across the floor, grappling for the gun. Marcus's strength matched Preston's fury, but something deeper drove Preston now. Love, not power. Addison screamed, "Daddy!" The weapon slid across the concrete, spinning out of reach. Both men dove for it, but Preston was faster this time. His hand closed around the grip. He rose, bloodied and shaking, pointing it at the man who had once been his most trusted ally. Marcus laughed through broken teeth. "You don't have the guts. You've always paid others to get your hands dirty." Preston's finger hovered over the trigger. His mind swirled with images. Addison as a child, Kiera risking her life, the empire he'd built on control. Now everything came down to this moment. Preston's voice trembled as he aimed. "This ends tonight." But would he pull the trigger, or spare Marcus's life? The gun felt heavier than steel in Preston's hand. His finger hovered on the trigger, sweat dripping down his temple, the sound of his own breathing thunderous in his ears. Marcus knelt before him, bloodied but defiant, a twisted grin curling his lips. "Do it. Prove me right. You're no different from us." Kiera clutched Addison's shoulders, whispering, "Don't look, Addie. Don't look." But Addison shook her head, eyes wide, voice trembling. "Daddy, don't. Please don't kill him." Her plea sliced through the rage flooding Preston's chest. For a moment, time froze. He saw the little girl who once climbed into his lap to beg for bedtime stories. The same girl who now begged him to choose mercy over vengeance. Preston's grip tightened. The anger screamed at him to pull the trigger. But then Kiera's words echoed in his mind. "They wanted to break you. They wanted to prove you were just like them." Slowly, Preston lowered the gun. His voice cracked as he spoke. "No, I'm not you, Marcus. And I never will be." Marcus sneered. "Weakness." Preston stepped back, never lowering his aim completely. "No. Strength." Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Someone had called them. But who? The sirens screeched closer, red and blue lights flashing against the warehouse walls. Marcus spat blood, his grin fading into something colder. "You think the cops will save you? Luther owns half of them." Preston didn't answer. He kept the gun trained on Marcus as squad cars screeched to a halt outside. Heavy boots pounded against concrete. Officers stormed in, guns drawn, shouting commands. Kiera raised her hands immediately, Addison clung to her father, and Marcus simply laughed as he was forced to the ground and cuffed. But Preston knew it wasn't over. As Marcus was dragged out, he leaned close, whispering, "This isn't the end. Luther doesn't lose. He multiplies." Those words stuck like poison in Preston's chest. Even in chains, Marcus carried Luther's shadow. Addison clung tighter, her small voice muffled against his shirt. "Daddy, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't see it." Preston stroked her hair, fighting back tears. "None of this was your fault. They used you to hurt me. But they'll never touch you again." Kiera stood beside them, exhausted but unbroken. She held up the folder she'd risked her life to grab. "We can use this. It's enough to expose Luther's whole network." Preston looked at her, at the bruises on her arms, the fire still burning in her eyes. For the first time in years he felt something unfamiliar, humility. "Then we fight," he said quietly. As officers loaded Marcus into the squad car, Preston's phone buzzed, an unknown number flashing on the screen. A familiar voice whispered through the speaker, "You can cage Marcus, but you'll never cage me." The unknown voice slithered through Preston's phone, low and deliberate. "You can cage Marcus, but you'll never cage me. Luther, the man behind everything." Preston's chest tightened. He glanced at Addison, still clinging to his arm, and at Kiera, clutching the stolen folder. He stepped away so neither of them could hear the venom pouring through the line. "What do you want?" he hissed. A soft chuckle followed. "I already have it. You're exposed, Preston. The city knows your empire is cracked. The girl nearly broke you. Next time she won't come back at all." Preston's blood ran cold. "If you touch her again, I'll burn everything you built to the ground." Luther's voice hardened. "You'll try. And when you do, you'll see just how deep my roots go. Police, judges, mayors, all mine." The line went dead. Preston lowered the phone slowly, the weight of the threat pressing against his ribs like iron. The battle wasn't finished. It had only just begun. Addison tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, who was it?" He forced a smile, hiding the storm inside him. "Someone who won't win." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure. Kiera opened the folder again, pointing to a sealed envelope inside. "Mr. Caldwell, you need to see this. It's not just about Luther, it's about you." Preston unfolded the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were photographs, grainy surveillance shots of his own offices, his own home. Dates, times, records of his calls. They hadn't just tracked Addison. They had been tracking him. Kiera's voice was steady, almost too calm for the weight of her words. "They've been watching you for years. Every deal. Every secret. They built their empire in your shadow." The realization struck like a blow. Luther hadn't just attacked his family, he had built his power on Preston's blind spots. Addison's voice cracked. "Daddy, what does this mean?" Preston looked at her, his heart breaking and healing all at once. "It means I can't just protect you anymore. I have to change everything. The way I live. The way I lead. No more cages. No more silence." For the first time, tears ran openly down his face. He pulled Addison and Kiera close, their bruised bodies pressed against his own. "We fight together now. Not as billionaire and strangers. As family." Outside, the night was beginning to break into dawn. Sirens faded. Police lights dimmed. A new day crept across the horizon. Preston knew Luther was still out there. The war was far from over. But something inside him had shifted. He wasn't just a man guarding his empire anymore. He was a father who had nearly lost everything, and found something stronger in return. Hope. As Preston turned away from the warehouse, Addison whispered, "Daddy, what if Luther comes back?" Preston glanced at Kiera, then back at his daughter, his voice low but firm. "Then he'll find us waiting.